The Second Amendment Preservation Act, it's in the news everywhere right now. What does it mean? How did we get here? And what's next as we fight to tell Joe Biden keep his hands off our cops here in Missouri? Hey guys, Aaron Dorr here with the Missouri Firearms Coalition. Everybody is asking us about the Second Amendment Preservation Act right now. It's been in the news nonstop for the last couple of days. And you guys are asking us, some of you are asking, well, what is SAPA? How do we get in this situation we're in right now? And what's next? Is SAPA dead? Is it over? Guys, we're going to answer all that for you right now. So again, as a reminder, the Second Amendment Preservation Act, we call it SAPA for short. What it does, it asserts the 10th Amendment, and it tells Joe Biden that here in Missouri, we elect our General Assembly, we hire our cops, and we tell our cops to enforce the laws of our General Assembly. These laws are backed up by our state constitution, and we're a self-contained unit. And we don't want to have our cops be used by Joe Biden to enforce federal gun control laws. And what that has done is denied Joe Biden the free use of Missouri cops. Now, media outlets all over the country, all across the state, are idiots when they read SAPA. What they're trying to tell you is that we are telling Joe Biden what laws he may enforce here in Missouri. SAPA never says that. SAPA law says that Missouri cops may not be used to enforce federal law. It does not say that state law supersedes federal law. And so as a result of that, if Joe Biden wants to have federal officers enforce his agenda here in Missouri, he can have federal officers enforce his agenda. It's not a problem. The problem comes in where the federal government has always counted on state and local cops to do their bidding. They always rely on our resources here at the state level to carry out the enforcement side of their laws and executive orders. So when Joe Biden unilaterally bans pistol braces or regulates pistol braces, he expects our cops to enforce that crap here in Missouri. When he puts limitations on 80% lowers, homemade firearms, he expects our cops to enforce that here in Missouri. And if he ever passes a ban on assault weapons or magazines or things like that, he will expect our cops to enforce that here in Missouri. That's why SAPA is such a problem for Joe Biden, because if they ever lose free access to our cops, their agenda, while still on the books, will largely go unenforced because they don't have the manpower to do it themselves. So when you hear a media outlet here in Missouri or across the country say, it's a supremacy clause violation, these are self-loathing idiots who either can't read or don't want to acknowledge the real impact of SAPA. It doesn't say that the federal government has no authority here. It just says, you know what? You better enforce that authority on your own dime with your own manpower. We're not going to do it for you here in Missouri. So that's what SAPA is. We all know why we want SAPA here in Missouri, because Joe Biden is a deranged madman who is trying to pass gun control by executive order, by international treaty, and by legislative process. And we don't want to have Missouri turned into Washington, D.C. So that's what SAPA is. That's why we need it so badly here in Missouri. Now, here is a timeline on kind of how we got where we are. So I had to write these down so I didn't forget it. So SAPA was signed into law by Governor Parsons on June of 2021, summer of 2021. Many of you guys joined us there in Lee Summit for that ceremony. It was a great day. Always have a fun time there at that gun shop. That was June of 2021. Then we had oral arguments where the DOJ brought their case against SAPA. We had oral arguments in Kansas City in federal district court, June of 2022. So July of last year. So this took a little bit of time. We had multiple lower grade lawsuits, and then we had the feds come in with their lawsuit. That was all expected. Oral arguments were July of last year. Then this year in March, 9 months later, then Judge Wimes comes out with his opinion and says that SAPA is not constitutional and it will not be enforced here in Missouri. Again, that was March of this year. Now, when that happened, Attorney General Andrew Bailey requested a stay from Judge Wimes. And what that means is the judge says, you can't enforce it, but I'm going to put a stay or a pause on my order, giving you time to appeal this to a higher court. That was granted. That stay was granted by Judge Wimes, and it gave A.G. Bailey time to ask the Eighth Circuit to give us a more permanent stay while we had time to make our appeal in the Eighth Circuit. That request from the Eighth Circuit, after a 6-month delay, was denied in early August of this year. I'm checking my dates here. Early August of this year, they denied that. And so when the Eighth Circuit denied the stay, at that point, SAPA is no longer the law here in Missouri. I want to be clear on that. SAPA is not the law currently here in Missouri. After the Eighth Circuit would not give their stay, then A.G. Bailey made an appeal to the Supreme Court of the United States, and he asked the Supreme Court, or SCOTUS, to give us that stay, again, pending the outcome of what's going to be a lengthy appellate process. And SCOTUS, just a couple of days ago, came out and said, no, we will not give you the stay on SAPA. So the media is going berserk, trying to make you guys believe that the Supreme Court has issued an opinion about whether or not SAPA is constitutional. None of that is what happened. I want to be clear on that. All we've had from the Supreme Court, all we've had from the Eighth Circuit is procedural decisions on stay motions. We haven't even had oral arguments yet in the Eighth Circuit, let alone arguments before the Supreme Court of the United States. Okay. So again, right now, SAPA is not in effect, and now we begin the appellate process. Now, is that great? No, we would like to have a stay in place pending the outcome of this litigation. But here's the good news. When the Supreme Court gave their opinion or their decision to not grant the stay, first of all, they didn't have to interact with that request. They could have just ignored it. It happens a lot. When they did give an answer, they could have had a very generic answer that says, no, we're not going to extend the stay, with no names mentioned. We didn't have that in this case. What we had was Clarence Thomas, who is the champion for freedom right now on the Supreme Court. He said, I would give you the stay, period. And then we had Gorsuch and Kavanaugh. They said, we're not going to give you the stay currently under these conditions, but they made it very clear that this was a limited decision on the procedural motions before them. It was not an opinion on whether or not SAPA is constitutional under the 10th Amendment of the United States Constitution. So what we've got is very definite interest from at least 3 justices on the Supreme Court. And for those who know how to read these tea leaves, this is very encouraging stuff. Again, they could have said nothing, or it could have been a generic answer with no names mentioned. These 3 justices, Thomas, Kavanaugh, and Gorsuch, did not have to put their names out there. And for them to do that means there is very real interest in SAPA law in the Supreme Court. That is really exciting for us here in Missouri, but for gun owners across the country, because SAPA is the most important gun rights issue of our time right now. So again, we're excited to see so much interest in SAPA. It takes 4 justices to grant it's called a cert petition, where they consider whether or not we want to hear a case, on any case, whatever the issue is. 4 justices need to agree, yeah, I want to hear that case and make this part of our workload for the upcoming session of the Supreme Court. We already have 3 of the conservative-leaning justices expressing their interest in this issue. In fact, earlier today, the St. Louis Post-Dispatch had a big editorial where they were bemoaning the fact that clearly the Supreme Court is interested in this case. And they made it very clear that while we, as in the left, might have won the stay motion, they said that does not mean that these justices will vote against or will rule against SAPA. And they're terrified of SAPA being heard before the Supreme Court. And they should be. This is the most conservative pro-gun Supreme Court of my lifetime and of your lifetime. I don't care how old you are. This is the time to have SAPA heard before the Supreme Court of the United States. Guys, so in conclusion, we're super excited. You're never going to pass something this big. You're never going to have a law that has this wide of breadth of implications on limiting federal tyranny and not have the DOJ go all the way to the wall to try to strike that down in court. Every media outlet will oppose us. We know that. All of the left will oppose us. We know that. The DOJ, the White House will oppose us all the way. We know that. And we all know why. This is about far more than the Second Amendment. It's about limiting federal overreach at the state level by simply peacefully saying, hey, you know what? If you want to do that, whatever that is, you can do it, but you're not going to use our cops to do it. That's what SAPA is all about. So going forward from here, I spoke to AG Bailey very recently. They are urging the Eighth Circuit to accelerate the timetable on oral arguments on SAPA. They hope / anticipate, I guess we'll use both words, to have oral arguments before the Eighth Circuit as early as yet late this year or very, very early next year. And then once we have done that, then we're well on our way to advancing this to the Supreme Court. Because one of two things is going to happen, right? Either we're going to win, the state of Missouri is going to win, and the DOJ will appeal it because they have no choice, or the DOJ will win in the Eighth Circuit. And then in that case, the state of Missouri is going to appeal it because we have no choice. Either way, we're heading to the Supreme Court after the Eighth Circuit. And as long as they grant that cert petition, we will actually have Missouri's SAPA law heard in the United States Supreme Court. I know it's a long process. I know it sucks to have SAPA not currently enforced here in Missouri, but Missouri, as is so often is the case, we are leading the fight for freedom again. And these kind of things do not happen quickly, guys. Thank you for all of your support to date on this. One final caution. Now that we have SAPA no longer currently in effect, we are hearing rumblings here in Jeff City of an attempt that might be made, led by Rhino Republicans, to gut some or all of Missouri's SAPA law, using these procedural decisions as their political cover. We will fight anybody who tries to do that in the legislature next year, especially in an election year. Gosh, we're looking forward to that. But as always, we need your help to do this. So guys, if you can, donate today. Hit the button below and donate. If you're not yet a member, go to joinmofc.com and get signed up today. There's major fights coming. We're only going to keep Missouri red and keep Missouri free as long as those of us who care about these issues are heavily engaged in this fight. Stand with us, guys, and we'll keep you informed. Stay free.